let's try that from the top. Welcome to the Too Much to Say podcast, where we have too much to say as usual. We are live streaming on Twitch. It is April 24th, about 8:45. We are late as usual as well, but
all right.
Just wanted to, for our listeners on the podcast, if you want to catch us on Twitch, we are live every Tuesday at 8:30, and today is going to be about unpopular opinions that myself and Ross have, because our whole goal here is to make friends. So
Right, yeah. So we want to immediately ostracize ourselves and alienate ourselves from the majority of what people think.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole goal of this podcast, is to make friends.
Right.
So the first thing we wanted to hop into the kind of the weekly talking points, some stuff that happened over the past week, just some interesting stuff.
Yep. Well, some big news on North Korea. No more nukes.
Yeah, the whole
kind of a.
I'm gonna be honest. This whole thing was weird. So what happened is North Korea suddenly had a change of heart, and now I guess they're no longer testing nukes. They created a hotline with South Korea, and they have dropped the withdrawal of U.S. forces as a condition of denuclearization.
Which is something, I guess, that they've had right on the table for quite some time now. Yeah.
Exactly. No, the whole time they basically, it's been a prerequisite, and it's also been a non-starter right on our side. So.
And all of this happening at the same time, right before there's a summit scheduled between Donald Trump, a face-to-face summit between Donald Trump and the leaders of both North and South Korea.
No, is Trump going to be involved? I think they're working on scheduling that one. It is going to be South Korea and North Korea, though.
Yeah.
A face-to-face with them.
Well, I believe Trump said that he would be involved, but he said as soon as it becomes unproductive, if he feels like it's not, he made a preemptive threat. As soon as he feels like it's an unproductive meeting, he'll bounce.
That is fantastic negotiating.
I can't blame the guy. I mean, I'll be honest with you. In this right here, I'm kind of like, good for Trump. Like, this is good.
Well, I mean, all this stuff's happening is good. I don't know if it's so much him as it seems like it's more to do with the newly elected South Korean president. President
Moon.
Yeah.
Moon. I don't know how to say his whole name, so we'll say Moon.
Yeah, President Moon Jae-in or something like that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
He or she. I don't know.
He.
Is a little more liberal regarding North Korea, and that seemed to be kind of what precipitated this. But
all it took was a little love.
Yeah.
A little liberal love.
A little bit of love. Imagine that. And then and then Trump had to make threats already, which. I mean, I guess it's just posturing, wants to look good to his base, but just why?
It does seem like a really out of the blue, kind of about face that I did not expect.
Anyway.
But, it's good. Tensions are decreasing, and that's always a good thing. And I guess President Yoon is going to make the first trip south of the demilitarized zone for of any president in North Korea's history for the last 27 years or something like that. So pretty momentous occasion.
I mean, all excellent. I mean, other than President Moon being elected, I'd love to know. I don't know. I feel like there's stuff not being said, and I think that probably goes without saying that there's stuff happening in the behind the scenes. I wonder if China was just kind of like, "Hey, guys, we're done. Like, we don't want to babysit you anymore. You got your nukes. It's time to grow up." Or I mean, I don't know. I would just love to know more about it, and we may never find out more about it until
they'll play it pretty close to the chest, I'm sure.
Maybe never. Maybe in 50 years. Maybe once there is no more North Korea, it's just one Korea again. I don't know. I mean,
tell you what though, if Trump goes and he does have a conversation with Yoon, he's not gonna be able to hold back from the Twitter. I mean, I think he'll tell
all. As long as he doesn't start a war via Twitter.
Yeah, that would be nice.
During his presidency, I'll be a little happy.
You'll be alive.
Yeah, I'll be alive. That'd be cool. I'd like to.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. But
Oh man. All
and
right.
so
Well,
that was the positive news for Trump and for the United States. The negative news for Trump this week was the Democratic Party filing a lawsuit uh, about the Trump campaign and getting involved with Russia and kind of
but a lawsuit, specifically a lawsuit against Russia, against the Trump campaign, and against WikiLeaks.
yep, and the defendant, yeah, saying they basically they used WikiLeaks as the go between to get to
Right.
Russia.
Right.
Um, I mean, overall, it's positive. If it goes to trial, then I mean, there will have to be public evidence, and I think that's a positive thing, regardless of how it comes out. I want to know more.
Right.
Uh,
That's the biggest thing for me. I just want to know where the hard facts are. I mean, I've seen a lot of blather on either side about this issue, and I don't necessarily think that the Democratic Party would just like make it up out of thin air, unless there was some kind of at least reasonable, uh, reasonable evidence, I guess, to think that something might have happened. But I don't know. I mean, is there conclusive evidence out there like that? Because so many people seem so convinced that Russia did in fact uh,
oh,
collude, or that Trump colluded
well,
with
I was gonna
Russia.
say, yeah, there's definitely evidence that Russia did what they did, but the
Hmm.
collusion is the part that's yet to be proven. But
Right.
I'll say this, based on what's happened with the Mueller, um, everything to do with Robert Mueller and his investigation, and kind of how the events have rolled out and the different indictments and that sort of thing. It, I mean, there's a lot of smoke, a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, people, and it's not, and I mean, everybody he basically Robert Mueller hits has basically pleaded guilty and or done a plea bargain or something to that effect. So we'll see. I mean that's where we've been at this whole time, but it does feel like it's getting a little closer to the end game. So I mean I am morbidly excited.
Yeah. And I mean, I will agree though. With who was it? This. Let me check this article here. I will agree that so David Axelrod, I guess a former advisor to Barack Obama, tweeted late Friday. So this is a member of the Democratic Party responding to these developments. Tweeted on Friday that the filing was spectacularly ill-timed and could have bet the White House strategy of portraying Mueller's criminal probe as partisan. Everyone,
Mm-hmm.
quote, everyone should chill out and let Mueller do his job, Axelrod wrote.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I mean, I think, yeah, it just feels like maybe too little too late, but we'll see. Yeah.
Mueller still hasn't been fired, so the you know we march forward.
Right.
But
Well, in other news, some fun stories from Amazon warehouses in the UK. Um, some interesting work conditions where workers are claiming that they've had to pee in bottles. They've had to do all kinds of crazy things in order to avoid being reprimanded or, in some cases, punished for not meeting targets at
yeah,
the fulfillment center.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, the article we were reading was just in the UK, but when I was looking at it on, I did a little more research looking just. Apparently, that's pretty universal. Like that's not just in the UK; it's also in the US. That like
Mm,
people are like. I mean, we know how productive Amazon is, how fast our stuff gets shipped, and
right.
the infrastructure's got to be pretty impressive, but also to make that be profitable at the same time. I mean, it's kind of the conundrum that Walmart runs into, which they both kind of apparently until now we didn't know that Amazon was failing to do this without just kind of shitting on their workers. But apparently they can't do it. They also can't do it without without
Yeah.
overworking
Well,
people and putting
and
having
Amazon, of course, flatly denies these claims. There's employees saying that they fear being disciplined for idle time. They claim that their bathroom breaks are timed. They claim that there are structures in place, whether implicit or explicit, that basically keep them in perpetual fear of not meeting certain, um, unreachable expectations. And so they're peeing into bottles and doing all this. Amazon flatly denies these claims. And I do think it's interesting. I mean, I would like to know just how prevalent this scenario is across the board. across the world for Amazon fulfillment centers, or if this is a unique problem to a few warehouses where there's just some like overzealous managers. Either way, I think the fact that Amazon as a company outright denies the claims, and they're basically they're protecting their managers, they're protecting their company over taking care of their own, over
Yeah.
taking care of their own employees. And I think that's dirty. I don't like that. I think it says a lot about a business when they'd rather save face instead of take care of their own. Yeah.
I mean, when you get
Cold,
so
unfeeling business.
when you get so big, I mean, you lose 1% of your business. That's billions of dollars.
Mm.
And so they get so, almost overly protective of it. I mean,
Is that the same? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying. I mean, I agree with you that that's not how it should be done. But I've also never been in a situation where a bad news story costs me $1 billion or more than that.
But the thing is, the damage is already done. As soon as it gets said, it's done. And how hard is it for Amazon to say, we were not aware that some of our managers were doing this, or that these conditions existed, and we apologize to our employees, and we right now we are taking measures to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we care about our employees, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Just come out and say we're gonna, we didn't know about it. We're gonna work on it.
I think that's how you garner the respect of people. But
that is not
interesting.
That is not how they went about it. So
no, so more peeing in bottles will continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's hard for me. I love Amazon because I mean,
I know. Yeah, I mean, will I stop shopping there? Probably not. But
yeah, it makes me feel.
Oh boy, yeah,
makes me feel bad about it, but I don't really have anywhere else to shop.
Yep, necessary evil. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't want to shop at the Walmart or the internet, but I guess it is what it is.
Yep.
Next one we had was Trump this week. Start off with his Nikki Haley, his foreign relations secretary. Is that correct?
Nikki Haley. Yep. United Nations ambassador.
Nations. Yeah. Sorry, she came out and said basically there's going to be new sanctions against Russia for the Syria, for everything that happened with Syria, and then the next day Trump came out and said no, that's not the case. So everybody got excited that we were actually gonna, do something to respond to Syria, in addition to not just to Syria, but to Russia, who supports Syria when they gassed their own people. And then Trump, I mean, to be honest, when Nikki Haley came out about it, I was very surprised and, kind of excited just a little bit that Trump was going to do something. And then the next day, that was not the case.
They basically said it was just a matter of Haley's, quote, momentary confusion. But I think that confusion is understandable. It's very telling because it seems like Trump's cabinet has been like increasingly disagreeing with him about how to handle Russian relations.
This comes back to the whole smoke thing. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, it's just regardless. It's just a bad look. Let's say there is no Russian collusion, right? Let's just live in that world for a couple seconds. That didn't happen. Why look so guilty all the time if you're Trump?
Yep.
I mean, it takes me back to kind of Alexander Hamilton when he was guilty of an affair with his mistress, Mariah Reynolds. But people were saying, "Oh, you're speculating. You're committing fraud. You're all this. As Secretary of the Treasury, you're doing all these things." He said, "Listen, come at me. Like, I want you to investigate me because I'm not doing anything wrong." Even to the point where he forced their hand. Trump's going the exact opposite way. He's saying, "No, I'm not doing anything wrong," and then he's like, "Oh, Russia, you're okay, Russia. We love you. We love you, Russia." Like.
When pretty much his entire administration thinks it's ill-advised, and he just keeps playing kissy face with Putin over and over again.
Oh, Robert Mueller. Oh, Robert, please, baby, just come through for us. Come through for us.
Yeah.
I mean, one way or the other. I just want to know the truth. I mean, I would prefer for our president not to be a traitor, but if he is, then I want to know that too. So,
Yep. Oh boy. Well, pretty big news in Tennessee. Uh, was it last week?
yeah, it just
Right.
happened past
Yeah.
week. Hmm.
Right. Friday or Saturday, something like that. There was a shooting at a Waffle House. A naked gunman wearing nothing but a jacket, I guess, but naked from the waist down, ran into Waffle House with an AR-15 and shot up the place. Killed 4, injured many others. Pretty horrific accident, and a lot of controversy there about how he obtained the firearms that I guess were confiscated from him, then returned to his father, who then proceeded to give them back to his son, who then proceeded to shoot up the Waffle House. So some interesting things happening behind the scene there, but amidst all of this tragedy, there is some hope. There is a hero, a certain James Shaw,
Absolutely.
who yeah.
I mean, shout out to James Shaw. I mean, he saw a man, with an AR-15 shooting up the Waffle House, and he basically threw himself at the guy, grabbed the barrel of the gun, got his hand burnt, got himself
Yeah,
shot, but I mean, saved a bunch of lives, and I mean,
because he successfully disarmed the gunman, right? And then who then the gunman then
Brett,
fled the scene.
yeah, just
It was a
ran.
manhunt for about 34 hours. Police finally tracked him down, but if it had not been for this James Shaw guy, I mean,
We need,
I guess he was quoted as saying that it was like fish in a barrel. I mean, he probably would have successfully killed everyone in that building
yeah, let's
had
get,
this guy not intervened.
hold on,
So
I'm gonna just throw up a, okay, get him on here. This is James Shaw this is the Tennessean. Uh, just want to give the man, put a face to the man, because
yeah, a lot of love for this guy.
yeah, man,
That's tough.
good
That's yeah.
freaking. I mean, heck, we just had the Parkland shooting, and the effing security guard couldn't even go in. Heard shots and didn't want to go in, and he was like a policeman, and this dude's
Yeah, and here this go, no combat training of any kind. He says only combat training is like wrestling with his daughter. He's a real family man, but no formal training of any kind, but just bravery.
yeah. So
And he says he did it. It was not a selfless act. He just was just thinking
oh
survival
yeah,
mode.
yeah, yeah.
Just got to live, just got to survive. But so people when asked if he was a hero, I love his response. He says, "I'm a pretty cool guy."
He is a pretty cool guy.
I'm a pretty cool guy. I'd agree with that. That's a good assessment.
And the second and the sadder piece of this, and we're not even going to mention the dude's name because he doesn't deserve it. But the shooter was another white
Supremacist.
white supremacist, yeah. And I mean, when can we just call them terrorists?
Oh no, you can't call them a terrorist if they're from the United States.
Yeah, you do something like this, you're a terrorist, and I hope he is punished to the full extent of the law. I'm an avid. I think that we should be that prison should be used for rehabilitation, not punishment.
Yeah.
In this case, man, you do something like this, I don't know.
Just let it be punishment.
Yeah, I'm done with you. So shout out to James Shaw, and we need more people like him.
Yeah, pretty great. Yeah, thank goodness for him.
And to follow up our lovely story of a white supremacist shooting up a Waffle House, we're gonna go to a pretty blatant example of racism down in I believe it's in Texas. That's correct. In Tarrant County, where a black woman, Crystal Mason, was recently sentenced to 5 years of prison for illegally voting because she was on probation. But they sentenced her to 5 years in prison for voting. She thought it was according to her, it was an innocent mistake that she thought she was able to vote. She voted. Well, apparently, she wasn't able to. But that innocent mistake, regardless of whether or not it was innocent, she got 5 years of prison. However, a Tarrant Justice of the Peace, Russ Casey, in the same county, a white
male, yeah,
a white male, or Justice of the Peace, was just sentenced to 5 years probation for tampering with a government record in the wake of his signing off of fake signatures to secure a spot in the March 6th primary ballot. So
was it 5 years probation? Was it
Was it less?
I
I thought it was 5 years probation.
I don't think it doesn't say actually. She got 5 years in jail. He got probation. It does not say how long that probation is.
Really?
So yeah, so it could be much less.
So, hold on. See this. Oh, you're right. It doesn't
Yep.
say how much probation he got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So probation typically at the lowest end is usually about 6 months. So
I mean, Ross, explain to me how their two crimes
yep.
are so astronomically different, other than
Well,
the color of their skin.
well, that's a pretty big one you got to take into account there.
Yeah, no, but no.
I mean, clear. Oh, well, he's a justice.
So a man, a white man who is a justice of the peace, so respected, and you know I would assume has to take an oath of some type.
Friends in high places.
Commits fraud, voting fraud of a different type, but still voter fraud, and he gets probation. Whereas a black woman who votes when she probably shouldn't have, still voter fraud, but on a much lower scale. One person making a vote, like this and this really pisses me off. Like,
Yeah. Well, you see this kind of thing all the time, right? Though I mean, it's like he has the social capital behind him, whether from his race, from his gender, from his position in the government. He has all sorts of social capital to be able to get off the hook for less. I mean, it's the same thing that often that often produces a chilling effect. For example, in rape cases, where there's women who have no social leg to stand on, but they feel like they can't speak out against a man in a powerful in a position of power, in a position of authority, and so they get silenced, right?
right,
And so this is the same kind of thing. Obviously, her crime was not related to his in the sense that she's accusing him of something, but yeah,
well, I mean,
it's that social capital at play.
the idea here is like she didn't even know that she wasn't allowed to vote,
Right.
and it will dissuade other people who think, oh, I may not be able to vote. I'm just not going to go because I don't want to get 5 years in prison. Like, I feel like she's doing her civic duty. Like, I don't, I don't know. I don't have a problem with her voting at all. I mean, I know there's a law against it and all that, but 5 years in prison for it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
I think if there's one thing the last couple of years have taught me about racism in the United States is that I think there was a lot more explicit racism that was lying dormant for a lot longer than people realized, including myself. I always for a long time just kind of assumed that racism was in fact a real problem, but it was more of a systemic thing. It was implicit, underlying the surface. Very rarely did you see a scenario where there's just overt face-to-face acts of racism against another person. I just didn't see it that often. But then, the last couple of years, we've had things like Charlottesville and all kinds of white supremacist terrorist attacks, and then stuff like this. I think, the last couple of years, if anything, have showed us that there is, in fact, a very, very real racist undercurrent in the United States that rears its ugly head a little bit more publicly, perhaps, now than it used to.
Racist, sexist.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Donald Trump got elected at all just proves that sexism is not dead. Yep. I mean, regardless of how you feel about Hillary, the whole grab her by the pussy thing, like, I have no idea how someone voted for him after that happened. I was like sure that was going to be the death knell when that happened, and it wasn't, and that makes me very ashamed of my country and the people in it.
We've come a long way, that's for sure, but there's a long way to go yet.
Yeah, and I've said in the past, I really hope that that Trump is kind of like the dying throes. I mean, not that it'll go away completely, but just kind of like the last gasp of
it's kind of like one last hurrah.
Major gasp, I should say. It's always going to be there to some degree, I mean, maybe not always, but for the foreseeable future. But yeah, hopefully this is like the last major gasp of just bigotry,
Yep.
and then it can go away, and we can and we can just love everybody because there's no reason not to. Like the color of your skin, your genitalia, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
all right.
Pretty messed up. Pretty messed up.
Well, now on a lighter note, before we get into our unpopular opinions, we have the Reddit shower thought of the week by user Kermit DeFrug. And the shower thought of the week is the Viagra commercial always says, "Make sure your heart is healthy enough for sex." That's a really deep question if you think about it in a more metaphorical way.
Just let that kind of sink
Just
in.
let that
ponder that.
Yeah, just you know.
And then maybe as a public service announcement, before you go and have sex,
make sure everything's good up here.
Yeah.
Sure
Am I ready? Am I ready for this?
Are you ready? That's right. That's good.
A PSA from Viagra.
Yeah.
Thank you, Viagra.
Little double entendre from Viagra in a good way.
Yeah. And thank you, Kermit DeFrug, for pointing that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ross, would you like to share with us your first unpopular opinion? Maybe we'll go from kind of least unpopular, like least spicy to most spicy.
Right. Just test the water here. Just kind of break the ice. Well, unpopular is kind of a relative term, right? Unpopular to whom? I don't know. We didn't really have a very strict criteria for putting together this list. It was more just kind of, spitballing things that came to our heads, perhaps things that we've had disagreements with other people about. So if you disagree, great. If you agree, that's fine too. First one up.
Just tell us about it. Tell us why we're wrong. I want to know why we're wrong. And
yeah. So first one on the docket, I'll just come right out and say that Apple sucks. This is probably not that unpopular considering the PC master race that floats around the internet. And I myself am doing this podcast from the custom built PC right now.
Likewise.
So there are plenty of people out there that already feel this way, which is why I say it's perhaps not that unpopular. Nonetheless, their numbers would speak otherwise, because Apple is tremendously profitable, and it drives me crazy because they are not innovating one whit anymore, and they haven't since like 2008.
Well, that's the biggest problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it is the biggest problem. Yeah, it's constantly iterating on old technology and repackaging it and making it all shiny and then marketing it to you as if it's something new and amazing. But they're constantly sacrificing function for form. I'll admit their products look beautiful, but
have they ever? Here's my thing. Has Apple ever really innovated?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
No, because like the iPad is not an Apple innovation.
The iPhone was.
Were they the first smartphone?
Oh no, but oh my gosh, on to that level, you better believe it. Nobody was even near them in the smartphone game when the iPhone came out back in I think it was 2008 when that happened. And I was huge on the Apple train because the iPhone was the first smart device. I mean, at that time, all they had was Blackberries. They had like the Palm Trio. There was there was flip phones and stuff like that. Maybe phones that had like apps built in, kind of. But the iPhone was the first phone, first of all, to have a screen that large. The first device to have a multi-touch technology where you could pinch and spin and use gesture control. The first smart device to have a full-fledged, full web browser, not some dumbed-down version of the internet. And it was just a really, really intelligent device in terms of its usability. I mean, it was 100% a complete game changer. But I feel like ever since Steve Jobs died, Apple's just been treading water in terms of new tech.
This makes me feel old. The first iPhone came out June 29th, 2007.
2007. Okay.
2007. You're still really close. I would have put it a long time before that, just because it feels like we've always had smartphones.
Right, just a little over a decade is how long we've had the iPhone in our lives.
It feels like an eternity. It feels like I wouldn't even know what to do without it now.
But this is the thing, though. They used to innovate, and then other companies would catch up. And now I don't know what they're doing, because we've got Samsung, the S9, the S8. Those are just phenomenal phones. The Google Pixel 2 probably has the most advanced camera on any smartphone ever. An iPhone 10 is like it's got face recognition. Like, okay, so does Windows Hello, and like it's
I
got
don't like it. Just as a side note to this, I'm not a big fan of all the Big Brother stuff that's coming. All this new Big Brother technology, like
like face recognition stuff like that.
face recognition, but also like Alexa and Google Home, where they just are constantly listening to you,
Right.
waiting for you to say, "Hey
Watch
Google."
this. Hey Siri.
It makes me
There it is.
makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I
she's always listening.
Yeah, I don't want to be listened to all the time. Just when I'm on a podcast. That's
So
all.
I'm frustrated with Apple, to say the least. I recently got a new work computer from Apple, and fresh out of the box, took the shrink wrap off, opened it up, and one of the keys didn't work. And I was like, a freaking keyboard.
How do you?
Come on. How do you mess up a
But
keyboard in
how do you fix it?
2018? Well, it was under warranty. I had to send it in, and it took about 2 weeks, and then I got it back with
Like
a
that, I would
new.
imagine they had to completely rip off that keyboard and put a new
The,
one on.
yeah, the service report said that they actually just put a completely new
Yeah,
front on the computer.
sure.
Yeah, it wasn't just the keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Hefty repair. Thank goodness it was under warranty, right? Imagine if one of the keys goes bad a year into your ownership of it, then you're out, $800 to replace like the entire front part of the computer. Anyway, Apple's ridiculous, and I don't think this is too unpopular of an opinion, but it's how I feel. So, why don't you take it away, Sam? What's next?
All right, we'll stay not spicy.
All right.
I'm gonna go really not spicy because water's not spicy. Um, this may not trigger many people, but I think tap water is just fine. Like I go to work every single day, and we have tap water, and we have filtered water coming out of a refrigerator. Not to say anything too negative here, but the filters aren't changed that often, and the ice filters, that sort of thing. But people like insist on getting their water out of the refrigerator or drinking bottled water or so on and so forth. And you know what? Tap water is just fine. We're
Got tap water right here.
Oh, my cup's gone. But it's cheap, inexpensive. I don't know. It's just
delicious.
Fine. It's just fine.
Well, and actually, okay, but honestly, it's also not just fine. It's
true.
also oftentimes much better than bottled water, because the FDA imposes stricter regulations on municipal tap water than they do on the bottled water industry. So if you were to run a chemical test on a lot of these companies, you would actually find that tap water is quite a bit cleaner in most substrates of different chemicals, except for perhaps chlorine. Often has a higher chlorine level and a fluoride level, which in some cases fluoride's actually good for you.
Well, the chlorine's what keeps it clean.
Right.
But and if I'm gonna take shots at people who drink bottled water, you're hurting the environment.
Oh yeah.
Like,
so I work on film sets, right? And film sets are notorious for plastic bottles strewn everywhere by the end of the shoot day. It's wild.
I mean, like, there is a purpose for bottled water. Like, we recently at my work, we actually had a time where the water main broke and we weren't able to use the water at work, and so we brought in bottled water, and that's fine. And when you're traveling, you need bottled water. I mean, better to drink water than it is to drink Coke. But like, if you have access to tap water and some ice, like, why are you paying extra? B, why are you polluting the environment for no reason?
I just chalk it up to brilliant marketing, honestly. I think it's just it's the industry telling us what they want us to believe, and we eat it up. And now and there's a certain elitist culture to it too. It's fancier to drink bottled water. It makes people feel special, makes them feel like they're drinking something cleaner. It's all psychology and marketing is what it is. That's all it is.
I mean, I wish I had thought of it.
And in Florida, some people don't like the fishy taste. I can understand that a little bit more, but I don't mind it.
It's gotten better recently.
It has gotten better.
It was better last year. But
Well, why don't I spice it up a little bit?
Right.
So here's a little bit more of a spicy opinion. If you consider Rotten Tomatoes rates this movie something like 99%. So just about
Is
the
it
highest.
99? Wow.
99% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I will say right here and now that I thought Get Out was just okay. It was fine. It was just fine. It was not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. In many ways, it was a great movie, and I enjoyed it very much I enjoyed it. I wouldn't even say very much when I watched it. I think the concept is brilliant. I think the political commentary is extremely good. I think the storytelling is extremely poor. And I don't know. What are your thoughts? You saw Get Out, right,
Mm-mm,
Sam?
I didn't see it.
No, you haven't seen it. Okay.
I have a
All right.
question. I have a question for you though.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel? So it's a 99 according to critics. It's
Right.
only an 86% according to the audience.
Okay. That's interesting, right? Because oftentimes most often the audience score is higher than the critic score.
Sure. So
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like, I feel like there was a sort of an and if you want to talk about spicy, the spicy hot takes here. But I mean, there was kind of a racial over. I mean, it is about racism in
Oh
general.
yeah.
The movie is.
Oh yeah. I think it's it's an unpopular opinion because I think it is unpopular to dislike Get Out for more reasons than one. Not just because people genuinely enjoy it as a good horror flick, but because people popularly want to, I think, support it because because it's a black director and it's a movie about black culture, and I think that's fine. That's fine. I think Jordan Peele is extremely talented. So saying this is nothing about Jordan Peele. I think he's a
Absolutely.
wonderful comedian with a thriving career, deserves to keep going and keep going far. Um, and I thought it was very well directed, but I thought the script was just really lacking. And that's kind of my biggest qualm with the movie, honestly, was the script. It comes down to the dialogue. It comes down to the stilted dialogue and the characters that I felt like were not very fleshed out. To me, a movie a movie is only as good. Well, let's see. If you have a concept-driven movie, very high concept movie, the story has to be just as good. It has to feel organic and it has to feel motivated by real characters, and then the concept just presents itself organically from that story. But to me, this felt flip-flopped, where it was all about the high concept and all of the story just felt like it was just serving the concept, but it felt very forced to me. I didn't like a lot of the dialogue, and ultimately it just kind of made me lose my interest. There was a few moments in the movie where I felt like I was watching a cheap TV show rather than a Hollywood movie. um, but yeah, that's my overall impression of it. Again, this is not saying I hated the movie or the movie. This is saying I don't think it lives up to all of the hype that it gets.
So out of 10, what do you give it?
I'd give it a solid 7.
7. Okay.
6.5. 6.5.
6 and what?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty low.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair score.
Sure,
That's not a
sure,
bad
sure.
score. I
I
mean,
mean,
on Rotten Tomatoes, I think over 60 is considered fresh.
oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, I would
I
assume.
mean, if 10 is like The Godfather, and 0 is like Plan 9 from Outer Space, then I think 6.5 is pretty
I
fair
mean,
score.
I'm glad that Jordan Peele. I'm glad it was successful for him alone.
Yep,
I do
absolutely.
think it's quite interesting that like uh the speaking of Get Out and now the movie that just came out, Quiet Place.
Yeah,
A
which
quiet
I'm going to see tonight.
a Quiet Place, is that okay?
Yep, Quiet Place.
That they're two rookie directors,
Yeah.
and they're both very very well received, and they're both horror
Yeah,
films.
that is interesting. Yeah,
I
very
mean,
cool.
maybe it's just coincidental, but it's just very interesting that these two rookie directors, first film, just getting, they're both in the 90s and Rotten Tomatoes, both very well, financially received in the box office,
Yeah.
and they're just horror films.
Well, I think this is technically John Krasinski's sophomore film. He directed an adaptation of a David Foster Wallace book, something like Interviews with Ugly Men or something like that. But it was not very well received. So.
I wonder, yeah, it's just interesting because like horror seems like it's such a hard genre to pull off so often, but then it turns out to be such an easy genre to pull off sometimes.
Well, I don't know if it's easy or not, but I am refreshed to see such good so many good offerings in horror lately. I mean, Get Out I think is a good movie, and I've heard nothing but good things about A Quiet Place, and it is, I don't necessarily think Get Out. Oh, maybe I think Get Out did deserve the Best Picture nomination that it got.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to see a horror film getting a nomination for Best Picture. I think that's awesome because that just doesn't happen.
Sure. I mean, I'm just glad that we're having new entries into the horror genre
Right.
because I mean, for it feels like with horror that you get a movie, it's successful, and so then you just make repeat. You just make sequels to it over and over and over and over again,
Yeah.
like
But
almost
that's
more than any other genre. I mean, I know it happens in action a lot too, but just I mean, how many paranormal activities are there now? Five?
I think 17, something like that.
It's a lot. Like,
They're getting to Land Before Time stat.
and I don't you don't I mean I don't know, I don't really see that in most other genres. I mean, they did the same thing with Halloween.
Right.
They went to like seven of those. I mean, almost every single horror genre, I mean, it's very successful horror film I can think of, they just take it and then just
Becomes a franchise.
yeah. And
Yep.
so it's nice to see some fresh stuff out there with
Yep. Some original content
mhm.
that's yeah. But that's beginning to sound a bit like a popular opinion.
Yeah.
So I think you better throw some
Ah, you're
spice. You
right.
better
All
throw some
right.
spice into the mix
I
here and hit us with another.
we'll go a little more spicy.
All right.
Um, I hate American Pride. I love America because I live here and I've enjoyed living here, and I think there's a lot of good things about America. But people who get super offended when America gets insulted, like, I don't understand. I feel like they're taking it personally. America, the country. I mean, let's be honest. America, the country, is not perfect. I think Donald Trump being elected in November, November 2016, was an amazing piece of concrete evidence that this is true. This, sexist, racist billionaire is elected president of the country, and I feel like the idea of America that we all hold on to is something worth working towards, but we can't be so insular, and we can't be
Hmm.
so our feelings can't be so tender. We need to look ourselves in the face and say, our country has a lot of flaws and we need to fix them.
But Sam, doesn't that make you a socialist?
I know. I apparently, like, that's the thing. Anytime anyone insults America, we just start. You're a socialist. You're a communist. You're like you.
It's the us versus them mentality. I mean, this is a very common psychological phenomenon. It's tribalism. It's as a lot of Americans feel a strong connection to their country, naturally so, as people from other nations do as well, because it's their tribe, it's their people. And as humans, we like to be part of a tribe. We like to feel like we're in this group and that we follow the order of the group, we follow the established way of doing things, and that if anybody is critical of that group, of that tribe, then we shun them, then we put them out, and then we say that's we criticize that.
Well,
You
being
see it in religions, you see it in nationalism, you see it even within circles of friends.
my favorite is then move out.
Yeah, well, if you don't like it here, then move. It's like, no, I do like it. I do like America, but I just
But I
am
want
willing to recognize the places where the things where it falls short.
yeah. I mean, I want to talk about let's make it better. Like,
Right.
that's what's so
And not
frustrating.
and not pretend that it's already perfect.
Yeah, and I mean so often we look at Europe and we're like, anything that Europe does different than America, that's just horrible. Though those socialist countries, like, what, like, you can't look at somebody like I look for instance, I look at somebody like Brad Pitt, and I'm like, objectively, he is a better looking, more talented human being than myself, and I'd like to include some of him in me if possible. I don't have to look at him and be like, oh well, screw Brad Pitt for being so attractive. Screw him for being such a talented actor. Like, I I'd like to look at him and be like, man, I want to be more like him. I want to see how I can, like, clearly he has a great work ethic. I'm impressed by his acting skills. Like, you know, I I don't see the need to be me versus Brad Pitt just because he has so much more. What seems like so much more going for himself in his life. Like
What's worse is you could respond in another way, and you could say that, well, I believe, or I don't want to accept the idea that Brad Pitt might be more. This is a weird metaphor, but I don't want to accept the idea that Brad Pitt might be more attractive to me. So what do? I'm going to distort the information and say that I am more attractive than Brad Pitt,
oh, fair enough. That's true. I
and I'm
am.
going to just discard that premise that Brad Pitt is attractive. So I believe that the United States is inherently a God-blessed nation and the best country in the world, and that's my belief. And so when I am presented with new information about how another country succeeds, I'm going to distort that information, and I'm going to say that their success is actually a failure, that the United States is actually doing it better.
So the Donald Trump,
The Dolan Trump,
the the Donald Trump.
the Donald Trump. I mean, that's really what it is. It's tribalism. It's subscribing to a set of beliefs without being critical of what those beliefs are, and it's a failure to look beyond our walls, a failure to look beyond ourselves, and 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 accept the fact that we might not be the best, and that's fine. It's okay if we're not. It just means making ourselves the best we can be.
It's about getting better. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
can't get better unless you recognize that where you're lacking. I mean, the moment you think you're perfect is the moment you start to fall. I mean, I feel like Apple's another great example of that. Like, I feel like Apple got on their high horse and they're very proud of themselves. They make tons of money because people are, iPhone lifers, and they've bought every single version of the iPhone since its inception, and almost as a matter of pride, just because it's an iPhone. But their market is beginning to slip. Samsung is doing very, very well
Mm-hmm.
with the Galaxy, and they will continue to lose new people if they do not innovate. It's the same thing. America, you can't be like, well, we wrote a constitution, we're done. Like, cross it off. Democracy, done. Everything
Yeah,
is gonna.
that Constitution will last us for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly. We can't do that. We need to look at other people and say, hey, taking care of other people is a really good idea. Maybe we should do things a little bit more like Europe, maybe like Canada, who has healthcare and that sort of thing.
And I think not doing so is just a failure to adapt to a global world too. This is not early 20th century. This is the internet age, when we are becoming less and less a collection of individual nations and more Earth, more and more a globe, and we're so interdependent already, economically and in some ways culturally, that I think not looking outside of our borders is a failure to really just embrace what is inevitably happening, and that's becoming a more globalized society. So we have to learn from each other. We got to work together, and we got to glean the best that we can out of every country we can.
That sounded very anti-American.
Oh yeah. Well, that's I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I hate
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Wait,
Right.
you just need to move.
Right. Yeah, I'll probably just leave. Yeah, because I don't like
Sure.
living here.
Move to Canada.
Sure. Well, Sam, do you want to pick my next one?
Pick your next one.
Pick my next unpopular opinion from my list.
You've made a lot of these yellow.
Well, no, I mean, just pick whatever you want.
I can pick one out of the yellows.
You can pick out of the yellows.
Oh.
You can pick out of the safe color.
We can do this one. I think that's a little bit of spice, but we're not gonna.
A little bit of spice.
It won't be too spicy.
Well, this one would be pretty quick. I don't have a lot to say about this, but basically, my opinion is that women who make claims of sexual assault, they deserve due process.
That's
absolutely. I mean, that is just, we're going to take that for granted.
That's
but
popular,
they do,
though. That's popular.
That is popular, but what they do not
depends on who you talk to, I guess. If you're Donald,
well, yeah,
you're Donald Trump, you don't want that.
But what they shouldn't get automatically is immediate trust that it happened. I want to tread carefully too.
I need a hard line. It
is such a hard line, and
subject.
I want to be very careful with how I say this, because I don't think I phrased that right. Because the thing is, I think we do women a great favor. A great favor. We do women. We do ourselves as a society a great favor in believing women when they say that something has happened to them, and I think that should be our default position. Just human to human, person to person. Because women have been silenced for far too long on this matter. But nonetheless, I think when it comes to the law and when it comes to prosecution, I know it is difficult for rape cases. There's often so little conclusive evidence. Nonetheless, the law is the law, and everyone has to follow due process. There has to be proof beyond reasonable doubt that something occurred.
Well, I think that okay. I think that happens, right? I think that the due process does happen in the courts. However, where it does not happen is in popular opinion.
Hmm.
Like if you are Matt Lauer, for instance, and I'm not here to support Matt Lauer because I think from what I've read, it seems like it did happen. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're Matt Lauer and someone comes out and accuses you of rape or sexual assault or something like that, your broadcaster's immediate response is going to be to either fire you or remove you from the air
Yep.
because they can't afford to. They need to save face,
Right.
and that's where I mean, let's say that those accusations are unfounded and you didn't do anything, your career could be completely ruined because of it. And that's why it's such a hard thing because, like you said, for so long, women have been silenced by I mean, like by everybody. I mean, that nobody wants to hear it,
Yep.
and that's obviously completely wrong. But I don't know how to handle it. I mean, I don't know how to handle it. I don't.
Here's what I see. I see a pendulum that is shifting, right? And I see this with a lot of like so-called social justice issues. I think um, when there's a paradigm shift, that pendulum that was tipped very unfairly in favor of perhaps one way of thinking, it begins to swing violently towards the other side, and we see kind of another imbalance. But I think that at least sets things in motion. And so, even though that is my opinion, I do feel like there's a lot of unfairness that happens. I think I'm kind of okay with it because I'm just kind of trusting society to even itself out over time. I'm kind of trusting that pendulum to just kind of swing back and forth until it rests to a very pleasant stop in the middle. But it takes time, it takes time.
Absolutely.
There was some controversy with I think was it Matt Damon recently, um, who said something about he had something to say about the Me Too movement. And I guess his whole point, he spoke up on Twitter or somewhere, I'm not sure, in an interview, and said essentially that we have to be careful because while sexual aggression and rape are clearly all in any scenario, that is all bad, and we have to root it all out, we should still be careful to make a distinction between flat out rape and perhaps sexual advances. There's a difference between making a little comment against a woman and then raping her. I mean, there's a difference there, and that was his point, and I agree with him. However, man, he caught hell for it,
Yeah. I mean,
and he was torn apart. And the basic point that one particular woman made, I'm trying to remember who this was. It was Minnie Driver came out and said something. She said, um, Alyssa Milano is what it was. Okay. And so she said this. She said, "Dear Matt Damon, it's the micro that makes the macro." She said, "We are in a culture of outrage because the magnitude of rage is, in fact, overtly outrageous, and it is righteous." And then she said, "We are not outraged because someone grabbed our asses in a picture. We are outraged because we were made to feel this was normal. We are outraged because we have been gaslighted. We are outraged because we were silenced for so long." And then she said, "The sexual harassment, misconduct, assault, and violence is a systemic disease. The tumor is being cut out right now with no anesthesia. Please send flowers."
I,
And I actually see your point of view. I absolutely do.
I I just worry. I guess my worry is just that like any pendulum that swings, it's gonna swing back. I mean, that's kind of what happened with Barack Obama getting
Right.
elected. Like Trump, in my opinion, Trump is a result of a black man becoming president because white people couldn't handle it after 8 years. So we picked the most backwards idiot that we could to run to be the president of the United States because I guess that might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion as well, but just because Obama, I mean, even if this is not something people did, consciously, they did it subconsciously. They reacted negatively to having Obama. I mean, the smearing that Fox News did of his name during his presidency. Even though if we look back for 8 years, he wasn't that bad of a president. Like, was he perfect? No, but none of us are perfect. I mean, I think as a president, I mean, he improved what we look like in the world, and I feel like he did a lot of good things. But Fox News paints him as if he was the devil, and now we have Trump as our president. So I just worry that that same similar thing could happen, where because all women are being believed, that they'll be silenced again. And I really don't want that to happen because
That's an interesting point, because we kind of see it, right? I mean, because there is so much backlash against like the Me Too movement and these things that are really quite positive in most cases, but we see backlash from sexist America against it. I think, outrage is always met with outrage, and there's an equal and opposite force for these things. And so, yeah, you make a good point. I maybe I need to refine my ideas about that, because for a time I've just kind of assumed that in these social issues the pendulum will just eventually level itself out, but maybe that's not the case.
Maybe it will, but I feel like it is basically, if you take it too far, if the pendulum swings too far one way, it's going to swing back the other way. So if you keep swinging it too far a different way, like
it's just going to be this game of tug of war.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I mean,
I think what we all need is we need tolerance. We need to listen. We need to have love for everyone. And so here's another unpopular opinion really quick. I'll just say, I don't call myself a feminist because I don't like that it has so many definitions. I believe in equality, and I believe in women's issues. I believe in men's issues. I believe in having equality between the sexes, but I don't like calling myself overtly a feminist, because it's been defined so many ways that if I say that I am, that could mean so many things to different people.
Sure.
And that's what I don't like. It's like you have everything from like very reasonable movements like Me Too and things like that, but then you have all like the kind of stereotypical angry feminist that hates men, right? Which, I hate to throw that stereotype out there, but that's a real thing.
I mean, until male porn stars are paid the same as female porn stars, we will not have equality.
That's just supply and demand, my friend. That's just supply and demand.
I'm if you couldn't tell, I was kidding. Not you,
yes,
but everybody else.
Yeah. Internet, let the record reflect.
Yeah, I was kidding. All right, this kind of comes back down. I feel like I'm gonna kind of beat a horse to glue here, but I'm gonna throw another one of my unpopular opinions. I think that prostitution should be legalized across the board, regulated but legalized.
And I'm prepared to believe that. Yeah.
Oh, you're on board. You're on board with.
I'm on board with that. Honestly,
oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's the same as the drug problem, the war on drugs. Same as so many things. I think when the government gets their hands on these things, then look, people are going to do what they're going to do, and they're either going to do it through back channels and really shady dealings, and there's going to be pimps and brothels and all this mess, or you can legalize it and let people regulate it out in the light.
If you make it legitimate, you can tax it, and
right.
and you can do it out in the light, and no longer. I mean, I feel like we talk about it occasionally, but not enough. Sex trafficking and human trafficking, the fact that it exists at all in America is an absolute travesty. And I feel like making prostitution illegal is one of the safe havens of sex trafficking and human trafficking. Because you have these people who, you have prostitutes that, though all that they want to do it basically, above table, they would do it, to consenting adults and all that, but now that's illegal, so now they're all lumped in together, and it becomes impossible to separate the two things. But I think that by legalizing prostitution, we'd be able to weed some of that out.
And here's a funny thing about prostitution is I'm gonna play a little clip here on my phone because I can't think of a better way to do it. So this is from Family Guy, okay, and this makes a very excellent point.
Chris, what's the matter? You look upset. Mr. Herb saying terrible things about you. He said you liked Hitler and your name isn't really Gutan. Oh, Chris, you can't always believe what you hear. Example, everybody thinks that prostitution is illegal. There are ways around it. Hey, do it. Both of you are under arrest for prostitution. Not prostitution. You paid her to have sex. No, I paid her to have sex and we're filming it. So technically, it's not prostitution, it's a... Oh, well, as long as you're filming and selling it, it's legal. She's not a whore if she's an actress. This is
But I mean, really, it's you know, yeah, as long as you film it and sell it, then we're good to go. We're good to go.
Well,
No laws broken.
Well, I mean, low key prostitution happens every day anyway. I mean, you go out to a bar and buy a girl drinks, like there's an exchange of goods kind of there that where you buy her dinner and drinks and you guys fool around after it, even implicit or explicit that it's gonna happen afterwards. And if I don't know if you're two consenting adults. I mean, I'm not saying like I like prostitution and I think it's a great and honorable institution or whatever, but I just don't have an issue with it. If they're two consenting adults and we're not, you're not forcing anybody into anything, then why is it illegal?
Right. And if you can make it legal and impose the same kind of regulations on it as you do in the porn industry, like requiring getting tested, taxing it, and having these stipulations, it's like, well, I mean, geez, like, yeah, again, like I'm not necessarily saying it's like, oh, I hope all of our young women in the nation aspire to be no, not at all. However, if someone chooses to, well, geez, as long as it's consensual and they're doing so within the limits of the law or something like that, then it's like, okay,
And hey, more tax money, yay!
Yeah, like yay. I mean,
and I would take that tax money and I would pour it into stomping out sex trafficking. I think that there needs to be more funding to that. We're gonna kind of kill two birds with one stone here. We can put more money into it, but we also kind of eliminate one of the safe havens for sex trafficking. Yeah, so because I know that this is I know you and I agree about this, but I'm pretty sure this is unpopular because prostitution is only legal in like Nevada and not in Las Vegas. In the entire United States, I believe that's correct. I mean, somebody correct me.
I think so. Yeah,
if I'm wrong on this, but that it is only legal in Nevada outside of Las Vegas. So.
Yep. No, and and I would just tying that over to one of your other opinions here. I think I feel similar to that as I do about the war on drugs. Let's just go ahead and legalize drugs. We can stop treating it as a criminal issue and start treating it as a public health issue. we can tax it. We can if people want to buy drugs, well, they're idiots, but that's their choice.
Well, the thing is, it's happening anyway.
Right.
The idea that you can legislate your problems away is ridiculous. Making prostitution illegal doesn't stop it from happening. Making all drugs legal doesn't stop people from consuming it or getting their hands on them. I mean, prostitution is just two humans, so you can't make humans illegal. But drugs, they shouldn't even exist, and yet they do in mass quantities. And we just ruin people's lives because they distribute or consume them.
And we can either keep playing this cat and mouse game and waste millions and millions of U.S. tax dollars, billions of U.S. tax dollars to try to combat it, and to try to hunt it down and spend all this time prosecuting people for taking drugs and then putting them in jail for it rather than in rehabilitation centers. And it's ridiculous how much money gets poured into this issue that it's not a criminal issue.
It's not.
It shouldn't be.
And it also the second piece of that is we make all these people criminals.
Right.
So we not only do we,
especially with freaking marijuana. Are you kidding me? Okay, so this anecdotal story. Just the other day, I was thinking about the Goofy movie.
Mm-hmm.
Great movie. The music. Yes. I got myself a notion.
Fantastic.
So Tevin Campbell, the guy who sings Powerline, I was just kind of curious. I was like, whatever happened to that guy? He's got a brilliant voice. He's incredible. Whatever happened to him? turns out his career kind of got put on hold and ultimately kind of indefinitely stagnated because he got busted for pot and was put in jail for like a couple months or something like that. Whoa. Oh no, he smoked some marijuana. Better put him in jail. What a criminal. Better ruin his career. For getting high? Come on. I mean, like, that's crazy to me.
You are blurry.
I am there. I'm back. Okay, there we go.
But well, I mean, especially, I mean, marijuana specifically, and that's the reason I think it is becoming, legal.
It's becoming more acceptable.
Because it's pretty indefensible when you say marijuana should be illegal when alcohol's illegal.
Right.
Or alcohol's legal rather.
Yeah.
But I mean, this guy, to go one step further, this is one of my problems with. Do you remember Dare?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and it's not just Dare that does. I think religions do it too. That they lie to people. Dare, I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this, but my memory of Dare is that they basically told me all drugs are bad. No. I remember there being commercials on the television saying this is your brain on drugs, and then they had some eggs, and then they just smashed the eggs with a pan. Like, that's objectively not true. You just lumped in heroin, cocaine, meth, and marijuana all in together. And the moment you start to lie to people like that and say, hey, well, marijuana is the exact same thing as heroin, that's not the moment you lie to people like that, they're going to figure out, oh, marijuana is not that bad. I see these people over here smoking marijuana all the time. They don't have any issues. Maybe what they were talking about the rest of the drugs is not true. And so now you have seeded, you have laid the seeds of, distrust. So now everything you said is just basically false in people's brains, even if it's just subconsciously. And people talking about marijuana being a gateway drug, I'd say only in that way, only because now they don't trust what you said about those other drugs.
Well, and in some cases, I'm a little mistrustful of programs like Dare too, when they are constantly preaching to kids about how scary and bad drugs are. I mean, I believe in being well informed, but in some ways, I wonder if that's just making it more exciting for kids. The fact that, I mean, how many teenagers take drugs out of rebellion, right? Out of a desire to fit in, out of a desire to rebel, out of a desire, And I think if you demystify drugs and not make it this boogeyman that's going to get you, I think it loses a lot of that inherent kind of mysteriousness that draws a lot of children or a lot of teenagers towards it.
No, I think we should just tell everybody that drugs, smoking a joint will kill you. Having sex will kill you. And
if you have sex, you will get chlamydia, and you will
immediately.
Die.
It doesn't matter who you have sex with.
Right.
I think we should just keep lying to everybody, like we've done for the past 50 years or more,
and make it all really, really taboo.
So that way,
so that kids want to find out, so that kids want to find their information about it through other channels and through their friends.
Yeah. So prostitution and drugs should be legalized, and we should.
And for the same line of reasoning, yeah, absolutely. And the same line of reasoning, I changed my opinion a little about gun control too, because I feel kind of the same way about that, in that people are going to use guns, people are going to find guns, they're going to get guns. It's just going to happen. And the thing is, there's no conclusive data that says that increase in gun ownership causes an increase in gun deaths, gun murders. That is to say, suicide's obviously still a very big issue. But yeah, my opinions on that is kind of the same thing. I used to be kind of like gun control, and I still believe in gun reform, and fixing some very obvious flaws in our gun laws. However, my opinion on that is similar to the one about prostitution and drugs, in that if you can't legislate your way out of a problem like that.
You can't, black and white. But the problem with guns is that gun reform's not even on the table.
No, I know, and that's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah. All right. I've got. Do you have another one on your list you want to cover? I've got one more.
How are we on time? Do we have enough time for two more, or what?
We are running out of time. I want to cover this one at the bottom.
Okay.
It
Well, yeah. Maybe I'll just do a quick one here then. All right. Yeah, I'll do a quick one. I'll
Okay.
cover a few here. I'll cover these. I'll go rapid fire for just a few of these really quick
Okay.
before we finish off with yours. Yeah. So first of all, sugar candy is disgusting, and chocolate is the only worthy candy of any kind.
This is true.
That's all I've got to say about that.
I'm 100%
Fight scenes
on
in
board.
fight scenes in movies are tremendously boring, and if I don't know how people stay awake during them. Even in the movie theater, it is so boring. And as soon as a fight scene happens in a Marvel movie, which is, I know that's like half the movie, I am instantly out of the movie and I'm bored.
Well, on a positive note, the new Avengers is already an 86 on Rotten Tomatoes.
96?
86.
86. Interesting. Okay. Infinity War.
Infinity War, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll be interested to see that. I'm sure it's going to have a really wonderful fight scene.
I'm sure its plot will be amazing.
Yay!
Just like all the other Marvel movies. There's a spicy one. There's maybe spicy. Maybe.
I'll also say Scarlett Johansson. She's fine. I don't get the obsession, honestly, from men about Scarlett Johansson.
Agree to disagree, my friend.
No, I think she's a great, I don't know if she's a great actress. She's a decent actress. I really like her as Black Widow. I think she does a great job as Black Widow. She's fun to watch. She's entertaining. She's, obviously she's beautiful, but I don't get the obsession.
She's not Marilyn Monroe to you? The sex symbol.
Marilyn Monroe's not Marilyn Monroe to me.
But I mean, the sex symbol.
I don't understand.
Marilyn
Monroe
was the sex
yeah,
symbol.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see Scarlett Johansson as a big sex symbol. I just don't. I don't know. I don't see it. That's a very unpopular opinion, actually. Maybe not that spicy, but it is unpopular. And lastly, I'll just say, is keeping the trend with movies, I will say that sex scenes in movies are ridiculous. And if you're going to do a sex scene, you need more nudity. Because it doesn't make any sense to to finish climaxing and then be very careful to cover your breasts with the sheet. When does that happen ever? And also, when do people finish Missionary and then immediately roll over next to each other and then just chat, looking straight up into the ceiling? I don't think this is a thing. Not that I've been in a lot of people's bedrooms besides my own, but I don't see that.
Well, yeah, and then like you said though, like roll over and the woman has a sheet across her.
Right, like they just finished having sex, being naked and having intercourse. But let me be really careful here and
they just finished rolling around naked, and then they're
so either don't show anything at all or show it all, one way or the other. But it's a weirdly weird like Hollywood conceit. I see it's like the same as like Hollywood blue night lighting or something. It's just these weird trends.
Yeah, or just do it cleverly, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to do it
Jump
besides that bizarre kind of like
that sort of thing. Yeah, I agree.
Or cleverly hide the nudity with like a vase on the nightstand or something. There's fun ways to do it besides
anyway.
In a comedy or something. Yeah. And then finishing up the movie theme, I will say that replacing men from popular movies with women in remakes is not progressive. In fact, it is the opposite of progressive because it lulls people into a sense of progression. But I think there could be nothing less feminist about making a remake of Ocean's 8 or of Ocean's 11, but making it it's Ocean's 11 but with women. Hey, it's Ghostbusters but with women.
That Ghostbusters one, I firmly agree with you.
Yep,
firmly.
Makes no sense to me. And I'm all for that. I'm all for movies that really have real female leads that are original stories. Movies like Annihilation, where it's almost an all-female cast. I think that's fantastic. But when it comes to remakes and there's repackaging a movie people love with women, and then Hollywood gets to pat themselves on the back for being so forward thinking, I think
it's the second part that's the biggest problem, right? It's the patting on the back.
Yep, and marketing it as a big triumph for women, and it's just not at all. I really wish they had made a regular Oceans movie where is it Sandra Bullock or Sandra Bullock doesn't play Danny Ocean's sister. I'm like, geez, okay, yeah, moving on.
Yeah, almost if they had like brought Julia Roberts back from the first one.
Sure. Yeah,
and had her lead it because for whatever reason she's gotten to the life of crime like everybody else.
I mean, that'd be a little bit better.
I mean, because she was actually a character in the first movie.
Right. But this whole like, it's the same movie you know and love, but we made it women.
It's been a long time since I've seen Ocean's 11. Were there no women on the crew?
No, not at all.
Isn't that isn't that in and of itself pretty
Isn't that interesting,
Isn't that
right?
a little bit
Yeah,
interesting?
very interesting. I guess we have Steven Soderbergh to thank for that. I'm not sure what that
Like,
says
there's
about him.
zero reason in that movie that there can't be a woman on the crew.
Well, he redeemed himself with Logan Lucky, I guess. There is a female person on the team in Logan Lucky, and she does a bit of the work. And I think she doesn't just sit in the car waiting for them
Did you
to finish the
it?
heist, right?
I haven't finished it.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't say any more. Then, but
I need to finish it. Oh, that movie was. I enjoyed it. I don't know why I never got back to it. I
you gotta
watched
finish
probably
that
like
one.
the first 45 minutes of it. I need to finish it. Channing Tatum. I don't know, both Channing Tatum and Adam Driver. It opened my eyes to both of them, because I was kind of a little bit against both of them before that movie.
Well, I've got an unpopular opinion about that movie, but maybe we'll save it for another time. It was okay. It was all right.
Okay.
It was okay.
I need to finish it.
Yep.
All right, now for my final, and this is something that is just, I can't say it's popular in America in whole, but the fact that it's happening all down in the, I'm from Georgia, as I've mentioned in the past.
As am I.
Yeah, in Georgia, we have a number of counties that are wanting to celebrate Confederate History Month. And I don't even.
Can we just can we repurpose that title a little bit, just kind of give it a little bit more clarity, perhaps, and call it like Attempted Treason Month,
Losers Month,
Secession from the Union Month,
Losers Month,
yeah, something like
Losers History Month, featuring the Confederacy. Like, I can't even, the fact that down here in the South, people have still believe that, like, that they still want to laud the Confederacy. This goes recently, and not that recently, I guess. It was what, last August, where we were going through Confederate statues being destroyed.
Right.
And the fact that, like, why shouldn't we destroy them? Why was there so much backlash?
Well, I will say, I think I'm all for the statues being removed through legal means, but I was not really a big fan of people just showing up and tearing them down. Did that happen a lot? Oh yeah,
I thought it was mostly like legally being removed.
No, well, that but there was a number of instances of people showing up in big groups to just kind of their own volition just tear down the statues.
It's a little bit too vigilante.
Yeah, I think, let it be the voice of the people. But I do think I think they need to be removed. I think it's just ridiculous when, like, the narrative that gets told in the South about the Confederacy is just insane to me. And I get it. I get people want to revere their ancestors. People want to, they want to pay respect, I guess, to the people that went before them, that helped kind of build the South as a thriving part of the United States. But I don't know. I guess I'm not super on board with ancestor worship. I think, I mean, if I have an ancestor that did something despicable, I'll be the first to throw him under the bus.
I mean, right. I mean, I'm not. They're bigots. The Civil War was about slavery, pure and simple. It's in the Articles of Secession for Georgia specifically.
Explicitly stated.
Stated. And I mean, if my ancestor is a bigot, we're gonna say what my answer. My ancestors are not from the South. just putting that out there. But if my ancestors were bigots, they're bigots. That is what it is, and we want. I am not a bigot. I do not feel that way, and we need to move forward. I mean, this goes back to 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 2 steps back.
And let me hit you with one of the common rebuttals. I think one of the things that conservatives say the most in response to this is they say, well, even if they were bigots and things like that, and racism was a problem, and we should definitely recognize that. But the thing is, we need to leave these statues up as a reminder of our past, because the moment we forget our history, then we're destined to repeat it. And I think, okay, fair enough, but let's change the context up. Let's take those statues, put them in a museum where you can put a placard up and talk all about the past and what the mistakes that were made, and we can learn about it and kind of compartmentalize it. But when you put a monument in the middle of a park plaza and make it this honorable, venerable thing,
a majestic sculpture
yes,
of Robert
exactly.
E. Lee riding his horse. How about
And that's
no? Let's not forget the Civil War. How about that? We take that one down and we put up a picture of the underground. A
Harriet Tubman or something.
Harriet Tubman, a majestic statue of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Like, yeah, I don't want
Somebody who was fighting for freedom. You know, that thing America stands for.
Exactly. What? Like, yes, let's not forget the Civil War, but let's venerate and honor those on the correct side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it is the correct side. The North was right, the South was wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We do not hedge on this. And anyone who hedges, you're racist. Pure and simple. Deep down, you have some issues that you need to overcome. White people are not better than black people. I'm sorry, they're not. We're not. We're all humans, people. We're all human beings, Homo sapiens. The color of your skin means nothing. Get over it. No Confederate History Month. I know we have a Black History Month. We don't need a Confederate History Month. We don't need to move forward. We don't need to move forward with Black History Month and backwards with Confederate History Month.
Yeah.
I'd have to look. I don't know what month it is, but if it's March, that's really gonna piss me off. Like
Confederate History Month.
Yeah, is it March? Because that would just.
Let's look. Confederate History Month. Let's see. It's designated by 6 state governments. So they have it in Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and Virginia.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
April has traditionally been chosen, but I guess it depends on the state. So yeah, we're reaching the end of Confederate History Month as we speak.
Man,
like I said, yeah, we shouldn't call it Confederate History Month. We should call it by its proper title. We should call it Attempted Treason Month.
Attempted and Failed Treason Month.
Yep. Foiled plot.
For traitors.
Mm-hmm.
And then anybody who wants to celebrate it, we can all just celebrate them as traitors.
Racist South History Month.
Racist Southern. Yeah, I like that. Losers as well. Losers. That has to fall in somewhere in that.
It's like, the United States has a dark past. That's just all there is to it. We have a dark past, and of course we don't want to forget it because we don't want history to repeat itself. But we sure as hell shouldn't venerate it.
Well, I mean, it would be like, would it not be like Germany having a Nazi History Month?
Yes, exactly right.
I mean, hell no. I mean, if you go over to Germany and you start talking about Hitler and like doing
makes them very uncomfortable.
People get like beat up. They're not okay with it.
They haven't forgotten it, but they wish they could.
Right. I mean, that is a horrible, horrible thing that happened in German past, and they're never gonna forget it. We're never gonna forget slavery. But I mean, if I was in Germany, I would want to put up, a statue of Eisenhower, statue of Churchill.
Right.
Like, that's what I would do, and that's what we should do. We should have, Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, Harriet Tubman. Like, we should have these people. We should have all of the different. We should have statues to honor the winning side, the correct side, the North,
mm-hmm.
and everything else. I mean, like you said, we can retire some of them. I'd be fine with all. My unpopular opinion is they can all be destroyed.
And
I don't.
And
care.
again, for context, those of you listening, this is coming from 2 Georgia boys who were born and raised in the South.
I wasn't born in Georgia.
Oh, you weren't born? Were you?
Iowa.
Okay.
But I lived in Georgia since 1st grade.
All right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. Anyway.
That gets me hot under the collar. That makes me upset. I don't like. I love Georgia. I love the United States. I don't want us moving backwards, and seeing that shit just infuriates me.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that.
So, well, that I think that as usual.
I guess time will tell how unpopular these opinions were.
Yeah.
I hope if you watched, if you see this at some point, we'd love to hear from you. Love to interact with you and hear what your thoughts are about these things.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Spotify. You can follow us on Stitcher, Twitch, YouTube. Usually, I try to get the videos up on YouTube by the next day. iTunes, Google Play. Please follow, like, subscribe. If you're on Twitch, hit us up with that Twitch Prime. Check to see if you have it or not. You may not even realize you do. Hit us up with that subscribe so you can know when our new content comes out. And if you have anything you want to hear us talk about, hit us up. We'd love to. More feedback, the better. If you think that we're idiots for something, that's fine.
Probably true.
It's probably true in a lot of cases, but yeah, just let us know, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, Sam, good to be with you.
Peace.
We'll see y'all later.